Welcome, Black Pegasus. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really honored that you agreed to chat with me a bit about reaction videos. And I figured your channel is perfect because, as it turns out, you're an artist yourself and you do reactions.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I actually was excited when you reached out because I've seen your reactions. The first thing I dived into, I saw your Ren interview, and I
Okay.
actually did I forgot there's a moment you guys had a conversation. I took that clip and had a conversation about your guys' conversation on
That
my
is
channel.
awesome.
And then I've always gravitated to a lot of your reactions because you seem very you're very transparent, and the emotions you let when it's time to let the emotions flow, it's just so you're so open and vulnerable that I'm just like, wow, and I can even learn something from that because me personally, I've always had trouble being vulnerable because of the era I came from. So I really appreciate your channel. And when you hit me, I was like, no. At first, I was like, that's not Rosalie Reacts. I'm
No
like, that's not
way.
her. No, that's not the same channel. And then I was like, oh my God, this is her. This is awesome. Let's get it. So
That is so cool. Yeah, when you responded and you were like down for it and you even mentioned that you're a fan and that you know my stuff, I'm like, he knows who I
yeah,
am.
it's a
I
small
was
world on the interwebs.
Isn't it neat? It's really cool to see what type of community it is. I've been learning that about the different reactors. I think that's so awesome, especially when we can like cheer each other on and just, you know, collab versus it being like a competition or whatnot. Because everyone is
Absolutely.
different. Everyone has a different angle. So,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
I did a little bit of homework, just trying to figure out more about you. It looks like what I saw is that you've been on YouTube since 2006. Did I see that correctly?
I
Is that
think
when you
so.
started
I think
ish,
so.
approximately? And you got a fast growing channel. And I wanted to ask, did you start reaction videos right back when you started the channel, or how did that happen? What happened?
So, my channel started, I've been a hip hop artist, and I'm actually, and I don't, it's interesting because in my situation, I've realized that I have to start telling my story or it will never get told. So
Yeah.
I say these things in complete humility, but there's a moment in time, and I am somewhat a staple in Colorado hip hop and maybe even in the region. So I've started out as a rapper. I recorded one of my first albums in a group in 1999, and I've been rapping since then. I was in this really big rap battle in 2003 called Scribble Jam, where I battled people like Juice and MC Rhymefest. I ended up getting second place, and when I came home, my career ignited, and I released my first solo record. And so, long story short, I've been a rapper and a hip hop
Mhm.
artist. I quit my day job in 2003 and just hustled, just doing shows, selling merchandise, and couch surfing until I could get an apartment, etc., to make the music thing work. And I think my first music video, I believe it's a Keep On Moving, probably was put on YouTube around 2006 or 2007. So that's when you see and from then, all I did was music videos. I did a little bit of vlogging. I did a little bit of storytelling on my channel, but
Right.
typically it was music videos until probably the last 2 years is kind of when I started getting into the reaction space. So it's I don't know. I don't want to be too long winded, but essentially, me and my buddy Don wanted to start a podcast, and we were talking like culture war issues or trending topics, but every now and then we do a little. We didn't know it was a reaction. We just do some commentary on like Harry
Wow.
Mack or what we thought about Andrew Tate or Wu Tang, and we noticed something. People were like, "Yo, the numbers,"
Yeah.
and so we're like, "Huh." And then one day it clicked. I was like, "Oh, the people like reactions," and I started doing only hip hop ones because I didn't understand didn't understand the space. And then it just started taking off once I started putting my time and energy into it, because for me it was just fun. I'm like, yo, these records, I was just something fun, and I didn't know it was a thing, and so it kind of came together that way.
I love that. I think it's pretty cool that you didn't just start a separate channel, but merged it with your music as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm noticing that too about various creators out there who are reactors, but also, I don't know, into therapy or mental health, or musicians and singers themselves or rappers, how they'll do their reaction videos, but they'll also showcase some of their own art. I noticed even on your channels, in addition to the songs you put out in the collab and your projects, like different people that will come on the show and you show them what you've seen, or is it unfamiliar to you both?
Yeah, so essentially it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I I was doing reactions and I was very just I didn't know what I was doing, right? And I got this opportunity to interview Tech Nine. And because I'm really tapped into the music industry, so like I know people on a personal level. I know a lot of people, but I just, anyways, I had this opportunity to interview Tech Nine, and I was talking with my buddy Don. I was like, man, I don't know. I can ask him all these questions, but I don't want to ask him all this stuff a bunch of people have asked him before. Interviews
Yep.
don't really hit unless you're like, no jumper, blah, blah. He's like, why don't you just do what we've been doing and do a reaction? I was like, nah, that would be cringe. I was all abrasive to it. Then I just the last minute, I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And it in the interview, I asked him about Harry Mack and we did a Harry Mack reaction and it went off of the rails. And I
Yep.
was like,
I
oh
believe that.
wow. And
Yep.
so then what I started doing was I just started having fun. Like I have a buddy named Stevie Stone, Chris Calico, and I just started toying with this idea. And it was really cool. And then there was also certain things that I was discovering on YouTube I wanted to share with people if they hadn't heard. So I started bringing my friends, like people I tour with, DJ. Sometimes it's my wife, just like,
Yeah.
and it's just I I looked at it like a show instead of just a reaction channel or or anything like that. I treated it like a podcast. So I
Mm-hmm.
started once I started understanding what reactions was, I started watching other reaction channels and I wanted to create like something like that's a hybrid. That's just a
Yeah.
little different,
Yeah.
a little, and that's kind of just where I went. But yeah, I react to things typically that I've never seen, and then I put people in front of stuff that I might have seen that they've never seen. That's
Mm-hmm.
really what's really fun. But also, recently I've been going back and doing what I call classic reactions. Like I'll do still DRE and be like, this is what it meant to me. The first time I saw this was on MTV when I was, 19, and just different stuff. I'm just playing with different ideas and just, kind of moving and shaking with it.
I think that's a really wise, really smart business approach because with your first time reactions, obviously you're giving the people what they want in the sense of they get to relive. And that kind of goes with the psychology that I'm diving into. This idea, and I connect it with a lot of our existential fears, which people may or may not be aware of, our desire to find a sense of immortality. And I know that sounds like, oh, ooh, but I mean, everything in life ends, right? We're always things are passing us by. The wrinkles show up, time passes by, and we're bombarded with this pressure to be forever young, to be successful, to be somebody. We're all trying to bring value and meaning, but we cannot, for the life of us, hold on to time, right? It just keeps flickering. And I feel like with reaction videos, you're experiencing, you're reliving something, it's being reacted. And so that first time experience, I keep hearing people say, allows them to get back to that place that they felt the first time. It's almost
And
like you get to go back in time.
this is what's funny. You're absolutely right. And that's one of the reason I bring on guests because what happens is in my first time reactions, see, I won't even know anything. Some people get mad, like you should have did your homework, but it just makes the reaction funner. And then I
Yep.
get to learn from the comments.
Yep.
But once I
Same.
learn some things, then when I bring a guest, I get to relive it. Now I'm one of the people I've done a grip of high Ren reactions because it's just something that there's something about high Ren that I'm just like, there's something that I just can't pinpoint. It's like, in my opinion, how timeless art drops.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's just something
Yep.
that this generation is going to remember. And so when I put people in front of it for the first time, I get to relive it every single time. And
That's
that's
dope.
why it's one of the things that I do on the channel with a few others. But you definitely get to relive it, even if it's new to you. And
Yeah.
I discover other things while I'm reliving it in that moment. And it is
Yeah.
it's interesting. There's something special about that I didn't even understand, and maybe I don't understand the depth of it because I see people gravitate to things, and sometimes I'm like, this is just wild to me. And it's the unique thing for me is I'm 43-year-old man, and a lot of people like, yo, how haven't you heard this and that? And I had to go back and say, why haven't I? And as of recent, I was like, well, one, there was no social media, there's no iTunes, there's no
True.
YouTube, none of that stuff. When we were in the Air Force, there was only one radio station. And I also, this just dawned on me as of recent. I was like, yo, my parents were mad Christian and we listened to mad Christian music, BB and CC Wine and Carmen. Like, that's all we listen to. So like
Yo.
when there's classic rock I react to and people are like, bro, no way you haven't heard this. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
so it's just funny. That works.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I'm experiencing that. Oh my gosh, me too. In real time right now. I think that's what people that must be what people get when they're like what they mean when they say, "Oh, you put in words what I was trying to convey and oh, you felt what I felt." That's my story right there. I mean, in a different way, dad
Yeah.
Cuban, military brought him to Germany, met my mom, kumbaya, grew up Christian. So when you say BBCC Winans and DC Talk and
Oh my God, I forgot
Petra,
DC
oh,
Talk.
it's like, oh my gosh. And so same, right? I will have the same responses where people are like, I don't believe that. You didn't, you're lying, you're faking. It seems to be mind-boggling to some people that depending on where you come from, where you lived, what you grew up with, you weren't exposed to those things. And I've been learning, my horizons expanded. So all that to say, I'm having one of those, oh, I feel
Yep.
understood moments.
I say it on the channel all the time. My mom was very similar to the mom on The Water Boy. That's of the devil. Everything was
Yeah.
of the devil. So I was
Yeah.
like, all
Yeah.
right, and going back, some of it is, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like I really enjoy getting to see this stuff. And it's actually been fun. Like I've actually found some new things that are old that I really enjoy. And also cultures, man. Like what I realized is some cultures were a lot more open to integrating. Let's say there's some people I know where they listen to rock,
Hmm.
country, rap, and EDM. But I
Yeah.
was, I was a hip hop kid. I was really into gangster rap.
Yeah.
I was on the other side of the tracks growing up and I'm listening to rap. I'm not listening. I'm like, oh, that's corny, blah, blah type of music. Hell
Yeah.
nah, bro. Yo, let's get it. Blah, blah. You know what I mean? So a lot of that too took a lot of the time. And I even worked in a record store and I'd always be like, every shift a person would get to choose the music. I always listen to rap, and some of the homegirls there put me on to some punk or like indie punk where I was like, okay, I got to get familiar with some stuff, but just when you're in the little bubble or box, those type of boxes, like on YouTube, people get to see me break out of that box and be open to
Yeah.
new genres and actually fall in love with certain music for the first time. And I think recording that, there is something special.
I agree. I think there's something very special. And I appreciate, at least when it's the right type of audience, those who embrace that, those who are willing to, like you said earlier, they educate the reactor because of what they know about their favorite artists, or they're willing to allow that space for something to be new and unfamiliar. I noticed that in the comment section. I'd like for you to share if that's your experience too. People love to educate you about what they know about an artist or what you may have missed. Have you
Yeah,
experienced that? Is that your
for
take?
the most part, every now and then I'll get some pushback because I'm a rapper and some of my takes on rap. And every now and then people will get like triggered with certain ideas I might present. Like for example, one of my biggest reactions is The Devil Went Down to Georgia from the
Okay.
Charlie Daniels band. And the moment I heard it, I was like, bro, this is a rap. This dude is battling the devil with a violin. This is crazy. And some people love that parallel. And then some people will be like, bro, but for the most part, people just enjoy the authenticity of what you think this is.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, I never saw it that way. This is just what I grew up listening to.
Right.
So for the most part, yeah, it's most part it's love in the comments, unless you don't like something or you critique, you're like, well, I grew up in this era. This is kind of this, people, you know what I mean? So it just depends. But yeah, for the most part, when you're open-minded and you enjoy it, or even just like, I kind of like that, or I love it, typically you're going to get a better response. But there's every now and then where I'm like, I go off the rails. I'm like, what this was just to me. And then people get a little
Ooh.
funky.
Oh, they do. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that triggers some?
Well, I think reactions, people want to relive their experience through you. So if
Mm.
you don't have the same experience as them, they might get a little, I noticed mature people be like, oh, damn, bro, I was hoping you were going to like this. This is my favorite song of all time, blah, blah, blah. But people who are not in that place, they're coming to reaction channels for some type of dopamine. I don't really know. I'm just freestyling right now off the cuff.
No, I think
I,
you're
I
I think you're right.
I believe they're coming for some type of feeling and dopamine, and if they don't get it, they might get let down. It's like going to see a movie that was marketed to you for a year. And then when you see it, you're like, bruh, that's how it ended for real, you know? So
Yeah, yeah.
I understand, but that's what's fun about reactions for me. Cause I have some ones where I would call a stinker where I was like, oh, they're going to love this. And they didn't love it. They're like, you know, a guest, I bring on a guest and I'm like, even while we're doing the reaction, I'm like starting to get uncomfortable because I'm like, oh, wow. Like, because I know what the audience is going to do. And I thought they would, I got kind of loud there. Sorry. I thought they
Okay.
were really going to just be like, oh my, this person is the greatest. And they don't. But I've done it so long now. Now I actually appreciate those reactions even more because to go against the grain and just be true to yourself and be like, no, this is trash to me. That you don't see enough of that in the reaction space. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's where I'm kind of at with it.
I can 100% agree with that. That goes for me. I've seen that goes for just not liking something so much. You know, I've I've had like, oh, you try doing it better. I'm like, I didn't say I could. I just didn't like it. It's just not for me. Or criticizing certain things. You know, like I once in a while I don't do much in that regards, but once in a while I criticize certain things happening in the music industry nowadays. You know, certain over sexualization or certain things where I'm like, I don't see any life in this. I don't see any, and it brings people. It brings people, and you definitely get the heat. I mean, but I think if we're willing, it helps us grow. Even if they're disappointed, we didn't feel quite the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Those collabs that you do where you watch someone watch something, I feel like that's almost a triple reaction, if you will. But what do you think that does for the audience?
You know, it's interesting because it allows you to get in front of some of the same content that you really enjoy and get them in front of it. I think it's similar. I think they just want to see what the guest has to say,
Okay.
see the conversation. Now, what happens is every human being is different. We're a fingerprint, and every person interprets things different. So, a lot of times in my first reactions, I learned a lot reacting, and I realized this is a part of the 10,000 hours that I'm putting in to get my reps in to be good at whatever this chapter of my life, because I don't even know what's going on. Like, I've had some really explosive growth with this particular, and I believe this is the new chapter of my life at some capacity for entertainment. And I'm just kind of walking through the door, but I do know that I'm training, right? Even being in front of
Okay.
this camera, I'm actually struggling because I'm looking at the camera, but I want to look at you in your eyes. I need to look over here.
I got you.
But so it's all these things that you're learning in real time. But
Yeah.
what I would say is it allows me to get someone in here. They put their interpretation, and a lot of times it creates a new conversation,
Okay.
because they're interpreting it different than I'm like, wow, I never saw it that way. And then it
Yeah.
allows the audience to see that happen, have their own conversation, and then also some of the blind spots I might have because I am more of an entertainer in the sense that I'm not well read in a certain sense. Like, experience is my wisdom, right?
Okay.
Life is my wisdom. And because, now I'm raising a daughter and there's all
That's
these
amazing.
different things. So experience for me was the best teacher. But sometimes I can bring in my buddy who just loves reading about history. And so sometimes the holes that I don't see, we're able to, capture these moments where it's like, okay, cool. We saw Black P. That was really fun. It was almost entertaining because I have I know I have some type of charisma where I'm just like in my
Mhm.
reactions, but also it's cool to get some depth or different perspectives. And I think that's what it does for the audience. It brings different perspectives, different conversations, and also different energy. And also it allows them to see my energy in the room with someone else because there have been moments where someone was scared to open up. But
Yep.
because I've been doing this so long, I've been able to get them to open up because they were comfortable with me. And I'm just like, and we're having this very smooth conversation. So, you know, that's the good, every now and
Yeah.
then there's awkward ones where I'm like, oh man, what, like, like, cause what does Ren say? We're clumsy humans,
Yes.
and we're still, that's the thing too. Like, I'm from, I'm an 80s baby, but I'm from like the 90s and it was different. And, sometimes me and my buddy are in here with, guy locker type of humor. But then at the same time, I'm raising a daughter and you want certain things. So, like, you're just growing as a man. And people are seeing that on the camera, like, well, I thought when I was young, this was, like, it's just
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm just kind of walking through the door and just being me as I do that.
I think that's powerful. I think that makes for some of the best content, though, the authenticity, because even though a lot can be staged through, social media on the screen, I mean, from filters to just editing a bunch out, at the end of the day, like you said, we're clumsy. Like behind the scenes, we're still trying to figure life out. We're new to this thing, right? We've never been in this position in this point in time before. And I think if those watching us are honest for a moment, most would be willing to admit it's the same for them. So when there's authenticity mirrored behind the screen, I think that speaks volumes because it makes people feel less alone. And ironically, I think we got a whole bunch of lonely people because of social media. What are your
You t-
thoughts on that?
you touched on something really deep. I don't know why that struck me so much. That was very profound. There's a lot of people who are alone. This is
Hmm.
true. And it's weird because I almost feel emotional saying this. There's something about this camera. I'm just looking at the camera right now. It's a black lens, but I talk to this camera like it's my diary. And
Oh, wow.
I've said things to this camera, which goes out to people who may be lonely, but I've said things to this camera that I might not have even said to my wife because for some reason I'm comfortable here.
Ooh.
And I've never experienced this because I've always kind of held things within. And I think about when I open up about true trauma with these reactions, right? Because sometimes this music is a muse and it opens you up. And it's so weird because I'm from the era where you're not supposed to get choked up or feel as a man in a sense.
Yeah.
And then now we're in this new era where it's like, oh, open up. But there are these moments where you're like, no, I'm not supposed to, because I personally believe as men, we're in this war, right?
Yes.
Whether you're in it, but you have to be able to look over and see the damage or the lost ones and keep moving forward because you have to protect and provide for your family.
Right.
So I have these really moments where, like, I don't know, it's really strange just opening up in front of this camera where it's like stuff that you normally just think in your brain or you just keep to yourself. And so that's the weirdest thing for me, because I didn't realize I could do that. I didn't realize that I could just be that vulnerable and open. And then now to this massive audience where you're actually influential as well. I knew I could be an influence because I've been an influence with music my whole life, but just to be able to speak to people. And that's why I think people gravitate to a lot of my stuff too, is because there are these moments where I really just like, it's just me. And like, I'll really open up, like, with the Johnny Cash song, and talk about Mom Duke's passing, or like, us having stillborns and different things that were very traumatic in my life. And I just think people are alone and they need to know they're not alone. And there's something about that just touched me, just even talking about it. I'm like, yeah, we're alone and we're not meant to be alone. It's just, we're not meant to be alone. And that is the plus about social media, because we need someone. All of us need someone. And yeah, that's just where it's at.
I've never, until you just said that, considered that. Because for me too, I'll look at that black lens of the camera, this dark silence. You're looking into something that is still, you're looking into something that's dark, which actually we kind of long for, right? We long for a place where we can be still, where we can find some comfort, where all the noise of the world or the expectations around us from family and job and life and people fades away. And interestingly enough, we're in this, it's a pretty dope dance of looking into that black camera, processing our feelings like in a journal, but that ends up being received by hundreds or millions of people behind the screen. But I guess it came from a place of stillness. It came from that dark, still black lens where you got to be safe and at peace for a moment. But that the camera could be that little dark place of it's just me and my thoughts. And sure, everyone else is going to see it, but I'm being real right now.
Yeah. See, no, I never know what's going to come out, because when I do these reactions, it's typically based on music,
Okay.
but the music speaks to you. Like,
Right.
music is the universal language. So when you're dealing with someone like Ren, NF, or these people who get a little more vulnerable through their music, I'm not one of these people who are like, that's a banger. And I felt that way sometimes. I really dive into how I'm really feeling and how I think it could affect other people. And those are the moments that are special to me. And then I'm just finding out that that's special to other people, and that's why it's growing. And I'm not always like, bro, I'm not calling you bro. I just say
I
bro
don't
and
mind.
bro a lot. So,
Yeah, me too. My 10-year-old child calls me bro. You're good.
there you go. So, I just, we'll react to like Van Halen, and then we're just having fun. That's fine.
Mhm.
That's the great part. You watch, who are those dudes? Electric Callboy or whatever. And you're like, these dudes are crazy. Cool. But it's just being real, just being you in those moments. And that's what I focus on is, sometimes on the fun reactions, I get super hyper in a sense because I'm just
Mhm.
like, yo, this is crazy. That's just a part of my personality. But I'm also one of the people that I'll get really, I'm just, I don't know. I'm learning more about myself. Again, I do believe this is from the birth of my daughter and everything we had to go through to get her to this world. I changed, and people get to watch that change in real time through me. Like when I do these reactions, I just treat it like a diary. I'm like, yo, I just watched this for the first time, but I open up to people. And I don't know why. I guess I should have started a vlog channel and just talking into the camera, but I think reactions trigger the algorithm I see, and I didn't realize that. So all of a sudden you just have this audience that's just right there, like, what did he say about this? So it's just a
Mhm.
unique, it's just like I said, I didn't know this chapter was going to be what opens the door for me,
Yeah.
but that's just where it's at.
I'm glad it did because I think you being real and showing your growth sets other people free to do the same. My husband reminded me of that. I don't remember who this quote is by, but she says, our biggest fear is not that we fail, but that we are more successful and more powerful than we can imagine. We make ourselves small because we think it's going to hinder other people, but actually, when we shine our brightest and we dare to be successful, it sets other people free to do the same. Um, and I think when we're being vulnerable, it might do just that. Just like you said, when we're lonely or when we're hurting, we see somebody else. There's power in empathy.
Yeah, that's big. It's the difference between abundance mindset and scarcity. And that's why even I said, I'm saying this in humility, but I have to also not be scared to say I'm great, to
Yes,
say that I'm good.
absolutely.
It's
Yes,
funny because at the craziest rants could come from Kanye West, but if you took anything from him, is the fact that his mom called him a genius and he calls
bro.
himself a genius. There's a lot of power in that I just hope
Yeah,
people like, you got to big up yourself. Like even when I
bro.
spot, so I did something in this interview that was very deliberate. I
Hmm.
was about to say, I'm not the brightest crayon in the crayon box, but I took that back because I'm starting to have abundance mindset.
Good.
I was like, I'm not well read. Cool.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean you're not bright. It doesn't mean you don't have
absolutely.
wisdom. So like I'm
Absolutely.
trying to utilize my words properly because I do see some of the holes and some of the things I'd like to get better at, but you work at that and you don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up in the process. I'm dumb. I'm the not the brightest crayon in the box. Blah blah blah. No, take all that. So I'm working on that, and you captured that here because I was going to say that. That's what was coming out of my mouth, and I said I'm not as well read. So
Hmm.
my wisdom comes from experience. And that's
Yeah.
the truth. And you can't beat yourself up all the time because you're not going to go anywhere. You have the whole world to beat you up, even some of the comments. So you
Oh, yeah.
got to try to uplift yourself. And so I try to be humble, but you do have to recognize your greatness because that's how you walk into greatness and become empowered and become better and things like that.
I think that's powerful. I think that shows wisdom on your part. And quite frankly, wisdom and knowledge from experience is probably among the best kind. Because people can be well read all day, but if they don't know how to apply it when push comes to shove, it don't matter. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather be on the sinking ship with someone who's been there before than someone who's read about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like, yeah, the longitude says if we stand over here, we're going to be fine. Bruh, we hit an iceberg. Like, no, get the
Yeah.
rafts.
Yeah. I know, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. I think and that's why you have such a fast growing platform and because you're using it wisely. And I cheer you on, man. You know, you are of greatness and I'm glad and I'm proud of you. I'm happy to hear you're actually recognizing that because it can only be up from there because the more we respect the platform we've been given, you can also use it for good. It sounds like you really are doing that and aim to do that, making a difference with it.
Thank you so much. And vice versa. Like I said, I was a fan, still am. And
Thanks, man.
as a reactor, like this is what I'm trying to teach my daughter. I'm like, hey, you're on your iPad. This is consumption. Hey, you're drawing a picture. This is creation. Always make sure you
Yes.
create more than you consume. And
It's
that's
dope
what
you say
something
that.
I'm trying to just, keep that moving. But with that, it's like I can't watch all your reactions and all my homies' reactions,
Oh God,
So I
no.
only see a few. But what I have seen, they were very touching, very moving. And yeah, the same to you. Like
Thank you,
I'm
man.
excited. I was actually rooting for you when you got your Ren interview. I was like, because it dropped right before mine. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And because I was trying to like do a little studying before I did mine, but
Mm-hmm.
yours came out in this pocket where I didn't get to watch yours before we did our interview. But it was really cool because I was really nervous. I was like, man, I don't want to ask the same questions. I
Oh,
don't want to
me
da da da
too.
da da da. You know what I
Me
mean?
too,
He's like,
man.
yo,
Yep.
what did Knox ask? What did Hawkins ask? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but it was cool. And yeah, kudos.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. My final question, I don't want to keep you. I want to reiterate how much I appreciate you taking your time to chat with me about this. My final question, I suppose, would be, well, I guess it's a little twofold. What your encouragement would be to other reactors and to your audience or reacting channel audiences in general. Like, if you could say anything to, yeah, people that love reactions, those who want to create them, but those who also watch them, what kind of life would you speak into them?
What I would tell to reactors is focus. There's a lot of things I would tell reactors, so I'm trying to pick out something very important. Focus on authenticity and where your heart's at with your reactions over the views. It's very easy to get trapped with the views, the likes, the comments. Um, be aware that this is more than just there's something happening when you're talking to this camera and you follow reactors and you might see yourself trying to emulate like, hey, snap 2 snaps before you start. Fine. If that's your thing, if that's truly
Right.
how you are, but be true to you.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that you have a place and you can create your own thing and you can
Ooh,
learn
that's beautiful.
from these other reaction channels, but sometimes I'll just randomly click a reactor that maybe it won't even be that big and almost see this emulation thing like, yo, I know they're thinking I have to get people into this video from the jump, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they're like, doing this, that, and the other. I would just say, be true to yourself, put in the reps, the people will come, and something different might open up from reactions for you. For the people that watch reactions, thank you for the support. It's kind of crazy how much people support reactors and reaction channels, keep supporting. And honestly, I'm just going to address them because it's so easy to address that one hater. There's no reason. Thank you for the support. That I could say all this stuff to them, but we're going to keep doing things. And the reason I love it is because if you watch someone like, let's say, a Knox or a Crypt who have utilized the reaction space to build up their art, I look up to that because I came in this as an artist. I'm still an artist. I'm an artist before a
That's right.
reactor.
That's
For
right.
me, reacting comes it's actually easier than some of the other things I've engaged in when you're trying to write screenplays or scripts and trying to do this, that, and the other. So I really get to enjoy this. And I love that people are so supportive of this community that you can take a chance releasing original content, such as even this documentary you're putting out. And then eventually, like, you write a psychology book and, the people are, and you're the #1 bestseller. This is what
Oh,
it's
speaking,
about.
man.
You know what I mean? This is what it's
Yeah.
about. So I would just say to the people who watch reactions, thank you, because you know it's interesting thinking. I sit and talk to this camera, but they make it worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I could go watch these videos on YouTube at the house with my family and laugh, cry, just have a good time. But I get to watch it with them. And now they've created a value, they've created an income stream, they've created a lot. So I'm just going to be grateful and thank them. There's not much more they can do but be them. Even if they hate, it's all good. That
That's right.
Thank you. So that's what I would say.
That's powerful, man. That encourages me too. I really, really appreciate you, Pete. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, I just cheer you on in your endeavors.
This was real, like, these conversations don't always happen.
No.
There was I came into this like I was just I knew that I was going to be super open just because I feel like I know a piece of you.
And I felt the same way with my conversation with you today, how it organically just flowed. Like there was a couple of times, this happened with Ren too, where you said something that so naturally just flowed into what I was going to ask or say anyways, or you said something I was thinking. I'm like, this is dope, man.
And
Mhm.
I'm very open. I'm a communicator. That's what I'm learning at this point in my life, that I'm very communicative. And so I was like, this is going to flow. And I just felt like this flowed from beginning to end. I appreciate you having me. This was dope. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
For sure. Peace,
Bye.
peace.
Peace, man.